Hi, good afternoon. My name is Mike Jarrod, and I'd like to welcome you to this talk, which is Navigating Uncertainty and How to Take Control of Your Career in Testing with Confidence. Thanks for tuning into this talk. Before I go any further, I'm just going to pop up some slides that will help bring this talk to life a little bit. So give me 1 second. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good. And I'd like to thank Paul, Giles and Jonathan for the opportunity to speak today as part of Testing Festival 2021. It's a good honour for me to be involved in this inaugural event, and I hope that what I'm going to share with you today is going to be helpful and valuable, and rest assured, if you've got any questions at the end, we're going to have time for Q&A as well. So I've introduced myself. I'm Mike, as I say. I'm from Cornflower Technology Consulting, but I partner very closely with Jen and Phil Wheeler, who are the founder members of the Career Progression Programme. And between us, we're bringing a career progression programme to life, which is for technologists. And it's a structured framework of training, mentoring, coaching, and learning interventions that can help people who work in technology be the best they can be. I'm very much from a testing background, although I have worked as a development manager in a couple of organisations and process improvement manager. And Jen and Phil have both got extensive experience, as well as being life coaches and career coaches, of working in technical recruitment roles and IT delivery roles. So between us, we've got a lot to offer. And I'm including them in this introduction because I'm hoping they can join me at the end of the talk to help answer any questions that you may have. So what this talk is about is we've been capturing a lot of data from our quite large community of people in technology, a lot of them who are testers, about what's going on with their careers and what their aspirations are about their career development. And one of the things that I just want to share with you is that 50% of people who work in testing don't have clarity on how technology will evolve and how that impacts their career plans. And furthermore, 80% of people who work in testing have concerns about their job security, and it probably comes as no surprise that a similar percentage of people don't invest adequate time in planning or developing their careers. So the correlation between that data is pretty obvious. If you haven't got time to spend planning or developing your careers, you probably have got concerns about your job security, and if you haven't got an eye on where technology is going, it will give you a lot of doubt and uncertainty about what your career can look like and what you're going to be doing in the next few years. Now, it should be easy to sort that out, right? We're all intelligent people, we all work with data, and in our day jobs, we're all busy working away, being as good as we can be in our roles. But if it was easy to solve this problem, the data would be telling us a different kind of story. So when I ask the question, what's going on, I'd like to share with you where I believe uncertainty comes from in organisations that we work for, that make it very difficult to have confidence in our careers and managing them going forwards. And then I want to suggest some ways that we can operate in our professional, personal lives that will give us more confidence about how we manage our careers and where we go, so we can start to feel more in control. So I hope that's okay. Now, if you give me 1 second, I'll just move to this next slide. So what I want to do here is just share with you my experience. This information, in fact, the whole talk hasn't come from a management textbook. It's not an academic piece. It's really a sense of what's going on in organisations that I've seen, and I'm just going to share that with you. So it's the change in organisations and how they operate and what they do to serve their business that helps create or drives the uncertainty in people's careers. And the first thing I want to talk about is improving against competition. I mean, all organisations that we work with, unless they're charities, are operating against other organisations and trying to get a competitive advantage. And most of the time for us in technology roles and in testing roles, what that really means is the organisation you're working to is looking to reduce the time to market of working software. That's an imperative way of actually trying to get a competitive advantage. Your business can get more functionality out to the market more quickly, can get more functionally rich features to their customers and clients and end users, and that should hopefully give them a competitive edge. That's the first point. The second point is that the organisations that we work for are always looking to reduce costs. Now, I've worked in a lot of organisations who have undertaken digital transformations or transformations from waterfall to agile and to DevOps, or from old-fashioned ways of testing to quality engineering. And a lot of the organizations will say, we're not looking to cut costs. We want to be able to do the more for the same or the same for less. But of course they're looking to cut costs. That's exactly what they're doing. And that cost reduction is driving some of the changes in organizations about how to build, develop, test and release software. Improved value for money for IT, for the business, is an important driver as well. If I roll the clock back maybe 15 years, 20 years, IT was more of a thing that happens to the business. It was less of a thing where it was in partnership. But things are very different now. If you joined IT in the last 5 years or so, you will find that your IT function and technology division is very much part of the business. It's a strategic partner, and it's absolutely seen as an enabler. But one of the things that has really changed in the last few years is the understanding of business owners and the understanding of product owners within business about what IT can do to leverage better value for them. They know what they want from IT, they have a very strong sense of where technology is headed and how that supports their business objectives, and they understand what value for money in IT looks like. And so that's also driving the behaviors of CTOs and CEOs and CIOs to actually get more value for money out of IT to give them a better business margin, ultimately. What we've also seen in the last few years is a lot of organizations really wanting to make better sense of data. Lots of organizations have had data swimming about in different data ponds. A lot of organizations now corporately have made data lakes, and I can't think of one organization now that isn't looking to leverage information that comes out of legacy data and information that comes out of online, on-time data from production systems to make them better at making decision-making, to be more data-driven and customer-driven and customer-centric. So those are like 4 things that are really changing in organizations that drive change or are driving organizations to do things differently, that create uncertainty in our careers. But what that really looks like on the ground is that organizations are very keen still, I'm glad about this, to make the working environment a great place to be for people. Now, currently, software is still created by people, it's still designed by people, it's tested by people, and it's released into operation by people. There is greater use of automation and all those things, and AI and ML are tools and technologies that are being used now to actually enhance that process. But at the moment, delivering good working software is still a people business. And organizations are very keen to retain their best people and to have the right kind of ways of working and the best operating processes that will also attract good talent as well. So that's driving change in the way we build software in organizations too. The move to Agile and the move to DevOps is really looking to introduce one thing, which is to avoid silos and handoffs of work to people, to improve efficiency, to reduce friction, and to increase levels of empowerment. And of course, what we're seeing with those organizations that are doing DevOps now is you've got product teams who are jointly accountable with great autonomy and empowerment to deliver working software. That's a really good thing in my opinion, but that's changing the skills that we need, it's changing the ways that we work, and it's changing the technologies that we use to develop and release good software. That's a big change for people. That creates uncertainties in their career. I'm going to touch on that in a few minutes' time in a bit more detail. And finally, I just wanted to say this. I've worked in a number of different corporates. I've worked in a number of mid-size and startup organizations too. And the bigger an organization gets, the less focus, I believe, they pay and the less attention they have on continuous process improvement. And if an organization does not have a strong culture of improving its processes and its ways of working, there will be an accrual of technical debt across the software development lifecycle. And what I mean by that is that the development processes may become out of date. The solution architecture practices may not be operating with the right emphasis and the right ways of working that inform what agile teams need, for example. The testing processes may be out of date, and the release management processes may be very manual and quite old-fashioned. And that technical debt that gets accrued across the life cycle creates a huge challenge in organizations actually delivering the value that I've talked about and supporting the changes that organizations need to be competitive. So that creates quite a large amount of tension in an organisation. It has to be broken. And that break is normally the result of a transformation program, whether it's digital transformation or it's a transformation program to move from one way of working to the latest flavor, which might be DevOps or DevSecOps, or you can insert what word you want in the middle, but a dev type ops operation. The uncertainty, however, is increased, I think, when you look at the proliferation of new technologies that are coming to market. Now, the infographic on the right-hand side here has come from Gartner's latest report on emerging technologies in 2020 and 2021. It's in the public domain, but I want to thank them for sharing it with everybody. Because what it shows is that there are, in their mind at the moment, 111 new technologies that organisations are either planning to use or piloting or have actually got in operational usage. And when you look at the organisational drivers for change and you look at the technology solutions that can be used to support business objectives, that creates a heck of a lot of uncertainty and quite a lot of change in our careers. And that's what I'm going to look at next. So I mentioned that addressing technical debt and legacy debt in organisations often necessitates a large transformation program. And with those transformation programs comes a piece of work which is called moving towards a new target operating model. So an organisation needs to really get a strong understanding about how it operates, where the waste is, where the friction is, and understand with a new way of working that looks at the tools people use, the processes people follow, the skills that are going to be needed, and the roles that they're going to have to undertake to work in a more efficient and effective way. That's the domain of a new target operating model. Now, it's interesting what happens in terms of target operating models and uncertainty. Organizations, for some reason, take a long time to determine what a new target operating model needs to look like. In my experience, when you move to things like DevOps, there's really only one or two operating models with some variation of small flavor around the edges. But it does take them a long time to bring that to life, because they have to go through quite a strong piece of work with the HR department to talk about how that may affect people's roles. Now, senior managers in an organization become quite fearful of releasing information about the future target operating model, because there may be a consultation process that people in their organization have got to go through if they're going to be exposed to redundancy. So while that analysis and that creation of a target operating model is underway, they will talk about there being the need for a new target operating model, but won't share very much information. People on the ground in testing, for example, who are doing the job, will know that change is coming. They will have an understanding that their roles will probably change. They will be very aware and mindful that the skills that they need may have to be updated, and that the processes that they follow will probably be changed as well. But they will also be fearful because of the lack of information that comes from the senior management team. And this bidirectional fear factor is a really unhealthy part of working in modern life, I think. I don't quite know what the answer is about resolving it, but what it does, it creates uncertainty in people's careers, because they wonder whether they're going to be made redundant, or they wonder whether they're going to have to take on a new role. But once the target operating model has been released, there will be information about the changes to structure. And part of the things I talked about earlier is that departments and teams that are often regarded as silos, where the handoffs and the friction list are removed, and new delivery structures are demanded that will actually mean changes to people's roles. And inevitably, people are going to start to wonder about who my new manager be, who will my new colleagues be, what sort of role will I have to deliver. And interestingly, the question about will I be outsourced is very much at the top of people's minds again. Outsourcing has been around for 25 years now, and there's always been peaks and troughs of activity around outsourcing. But what COVID has taught us is that we're really quite good at working remotely and in a very distributed way. And I think a lot of organizations have seen increases in productivity. So although working from home isn't everybody's cup of tea, lots of people have taken to it well. And organizations, I think, have been pleasantly surprised that productivity hasn't dropped off very much. In fact, has improved in a lot of instances. And so for organizations who are looking to change structures, will again be looking at outsourcing. and how they can get people to do the work that provide the best value for money. So that's going to be on people's minds when operating models are released and changes to structures are announced. With changes to structure come changes of identity, and I think this will resonate with a lot of people in testing. I know from my experience that when I used to work in testing and I was a head of department as a head of test, that role was no longer required. The work of testing was distributed out into agile teams and ultimately into product teams, and there was no longer the need for the head of that department. And equally, there was no longer a need for some of the test managers either. And so a lot of people who are working in organizations that see new target operating models being introduced are worried about their identity. You know, how will I work with people that I used to be very strong colleagues with? Where's my tribe? Where's my internal community that I used to work with? Unless organizations take some measures to introduce good things like communities of practice, where people can still share technical knowledge and skills with each other, can still share stories about how to solve problems and provide a communal identity for people, that really starts to hurt and worry people about where they're going to find their identity, because it's a big part of people's working life. And another thing around distributed working is with teams becoming distributed, often into product teams which have got joint accountability for delivering good working software, people will often wonder how good their performance is going to be and how they'll be recognized by their performance or for their performance if they are part of a jointly accountable team. And I know a lot of people who used to be seen as superstars in an organization. You know, they were acing their jobs in testing, acing their jobs in business analysis, and they get folded into a product team, and they still do a very good job, but the success of the team is what matters, and you succeed or fail as a unit. And although they've done some very good work, sometimes their teams have failed to deliver on sprint objectives a number of times. And so, although they've done a very good job, their performance has not been recognised because the team have failed, and that creates a lot of uncertainty for people as well. And they wonder how to actually get out of that particular problem. Some other things come to mind as well. When you think about what's happening in organisations that introduce new target operating models, changes to processes create uncertainty. So if you're working in testing and you've worked in a waterfall way, or you've worked in more traditional methods of testing, shift left opportunities create a huge amount of interest and concern for some people, as does the move to quality engineering from testing. So if you're used to working in testing, even with automation, but you get asked to start to work in a team that's doing CI and CD, you're going to have to work in a very different way with your automation. You have to do a lot more upfront testing, a lot more upfront reviewing, a lot more work with code quality management, perhaps working with BDD and TDD. And with new ways of working and new processes comes a challenge of, can I adapt to these new ways of working? Particularly if you weren't technical and you're now being asked to work in a technical role. So the changes to processes can create uncertainty in people's careers. Earlier on, I talked about the Gartner infographic and the 111 new types of technology that are coming in. New technology is a given. I think we're all going to work in environments now where technology changes all the time, and the technology that's being built into our software solutions are going to be ever present as a change. And so that also worries people. They used to get very, very attached to their technology stack and to their own ways of working with those technology stacks. And when they change, that also creates concern about, am I going to be able to deliver work as well as I used to with the old technology stack? Changes to skills and competencies are a concern for people as well. So they need to know what new skills they need to have and what behaviours they'll need to adopt, and worry whether they'll be capable of learning the new skills to be able to operate in their new roles, and worry about whether they'll be able to earn respect and credibility in their new teams. So those are some of the things I wanted to talk about in terms of the uncertainty that gets driven by the change. I want to share with you now a couple of ideas of things that we can all do to become more in control and be the owners or the CEO of our careers. Now, these points on this slide aren't taken from a management textbook. They're just things that work well for me and have worked well for some of my colleagues. And these are the things that we advocate that people do as part of the career development program. But the first thing is to recognize that you need to take ownership of your career. Understand your career path based on your interests and your passions and how you would like to work. No one else is going to own your career for you. Your manager, your HR department may have an input to it based on what they think you should do to help their organization and how they think you could grow. But actually, you need to make it yours and own it as your own asset. It's a piece of your world that will help support your personal life. By being in control of your professional life, you'll have a more fulfilling career and a more balanced, I would suggest, and fulfilling personal life too. So once you understand what your career path looks like and what you want to do, you've got to create a personal training plan. That's the first step. And that personal training plan will look at what you need in terms of technical skills and what you may need in terms of personal development skills. And understanding what that looks like and understanding how you learn is a really important part. You know, some people learn really well by reading books, some people do online training, some people like physical classroom-based training courses, and some people are very vocational. I personally am a vocational learner. I learn by doing, I learn by watching and emulating people and working with buddies. Everybody's got their own way of understanding how to learn things and then apply their new skills in a good way. And understanding that is a really important part of the personal training plan. Now, the next step everybody who's tuning into this talk is doing anyway, which is about attending conferences to stay in touch with industry developments. Nobody working in tech should be surprised of what emergent tech will do to their careers. Everybody should be looking forward, understanding what is happening in the technology industry and thinking about what impact that's going to have on them and how they can stay in front and stay relevant to their organizations. But it's not just about attending the conferences and watching talks like this. It's about engaging with the communities that conferences bring together. So whether that's the Ministry of Testing or whether it's the Eurostar huddles or whether it's the QA lead in that community, getting involved in communities where you can share some of your stories and help other people learn from you and where you can share your challenges and learn from other people. That's a fabulous way to learn and develop. The point after this is also you've got to network effectively internally, not just with your industry peers. A large number of roles are not advertised. Even roles that are advertised internally are often pre-filled. The organisation has an obligation to release them as roles, but they already know who they want to actually give the role to. So networking internally with your managers and people in the management team to demonstrate your value is a really strong and effective thing to do. You've really got to make sure that you've got good work-life balance that allows for continuous or at a point of time learning that supports your career aspirations, and getting a coach or a mentor can actually help with that, as well as all the other points I just talked about. I've had a couple of industry mentors, and it's been very helpful for me to understand what I need to do differently in my career to remain relevant and to enjoy the rest of my working life until I retire. And the final thing I'd just like to suggest as well, and it's really something I've learned through the value of working with Jen and Phil, is that life and career coaches can really provide you with the tools to get your life in balance and support you on your professional journey and give you control in your career. And if you'd like to know more about that, you can reach out to us and ask us questions. So that's pretty much the end of the talk. I want to thank you for tuning in. I hope it's helped you. If there's anything that you'd like to ask, we've now got an opportunity for a few minutes to go through some Q&A. So please feel free to do that now.
Mike, thank you so much. And I'm hoping you are live soon. And I'm just waiting for the Slido questions to pop up, and then we'll be in business.
Yeah, thanks, Paul.
Are you okay? Good to hear your voice again. Let me just crack on then. I'll start at the top. So do you have any advice for people to help build their personal brand? Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It does make sense to me. I think personal branding is really important, and the further you move up the career ladder, I think it's more important to have a set of ethics and values that you work with that distinguish you to your stakeholders and to your peers. I think it's really important that you can cultivate a relationship of trust and credibility and respect with people, whether that's the stakeholders or the people in your teams or your peers at a horizontal level. And your brand is really set by your behaviours. You've got to think about how you act with honesty, integrity, how you go about building trust, think about how you support people in their careers, how you advocate for people, think about how you dress. It's really important to understand the culture of the organisation that you're working in and how you build your brand within that organisation so that you can thrive and flourish and maybe not be seen as a bit of a peculiar person. You know, if you're working in a startup and you decide you wear a suit to work every day, you're probably not going to fit in, although the work you do could be very helpful and beneficial to the organisation and to the people that you represent as a leader. So building your brand is important. There's a whole talk on that. You know, there's a good 30 minutes just on branding and how you can do that. So I think it's a good question, and I hope that as a very quick answer has helped answer so far.
Yeah. Okay. I think there's more to talk about, definitely, for sure. Okay. Next thing. What are 3 things you can recommend someone looking to be a mentor?
Okay, and another great question. I think, you know, these people are anonymous, should be putting their names on because they're great questions. And I think it's a big conversation that people need to have. I think the first thing before you go and look for a mentor is really understand what it is you want to achieve from a relationship with a mentor. You know, some people may just want a piece of spot career advice, like I've got a problem here, it's with a specific relationship, or it's with a particular technical challenge, and I want to have somebody who can help me navigate through that. That's not necessarily a mentor, that's more of a piece of coaching or technical guidance. But if you know what it is you want from a mentor, you need to be very clear about what sort of relationship you want to have with them. You need to know how formal you want it to be, and you need to find somebody that really understands you. And the most difficult part of finding a mentor after you've kind of made those decisions and thought about it is finding one. And there are lots of ways of finding a mentor. One is by going to conferences and networking and talking to people. Another one is by going to some of the professional networks, like, for example, the BCS. I'm not sure how active they are now in the testing community, but a few years ago, when Jen, my business partner, was working on a voluntary basis for the BCS, she used to ask me and a number of other people if it'd be mentors for their members. And that was a very effective way of actually getting some pairing between mentors and mentees together. And of course, the other way is by looking internally within your organization. There is a big difference between industry mentors and people who can look after your, your career and your technical challenges external from the organization you're working in. They can be very good and powerful people to have, depending on what you need from a mentor. But often you can find good mentors within the organizations that you work in. And if you're lucky enough to get onto things like the advanced career management programs in an organization, you'd often find you can get a mentor and a buddy from the management team or senior leadership team who can help you develop your personal and professional development skills. So I think looking internally and externally are both good ways of approaching the challenge, if that makes sense, Paul.
Great stuff. With that, I think we're dead on 6:30. So let's pause there. There's lots more questions, I'm sure, coming your way, but we'll save them for the panel session a bit later, Mike. Thanks ever so much. And I'm going to move on swiftly to bring Fiona Charles into the show. And I'm hoping she's coming online shortly.